Opposition leader Anthony Albanese claimed Australians are used to Scott Morrison keeping them waiting, as he urged the Prime Minister to just get on with it and call the federal election. Opposition leader Anthony Albanese has accused Prime Minister Scott Morrison of playing a game by seemingly putting off calling the federal election. Mr. Albanese claimed Australians are used to Scott Morrison keeping them waiting, as he again called on the Prime Minister to officially announce the date voters would go to the polls. He kept them waiting for the vaccine rollout. He kept them waiting when it came to actions on bushfires. He kept them waiting to provide support for flood victims, Mr. Albanese said on Saturday. Now he's keeping Australians waiting before he calls the election. But he should just get on with it. He should let the Australian people decide. Stream more election news live and on demand with Flash. 25+ news channels in one place. New to Flash. Try 1 month free. Offer ends the 31st of October 2022. Opposition leader Anthony Albanese has accused Scott Morrison of playing a game, as he asked the Prime Minister to call the federal election. The federal Labor leader, who was holding a press conference at the Orange Grove Market in Lilyfield, Sydney's inner west, was then asked when he anticipated Mr. Morrison would call the election. "I can't see how a Prime Minister, who really doesn't like scrutiny, will allow the Parliament to come back on Monday in the form of the House of Representatives," Mr. Albanese replied. "And that's what will have to happen. So either the election will be called today, or the election will be called tomorrow morning." Mr. Albanese added he believed it is highly likely the election would be called on either Saturday or Sunday. "This Prime Minister though, I think it's been a bit of a game frankly," he said. Prime Minister Scott Morrison on Friday said Australians would know very soon when the federal election would be held. Picture, NCA Newswire, Ian Curry. The Prime Minister last year gave up on governing and said he was campaigning. "We had a budget handed down that even the government doesn't talk about anymore because it was so thin, so devoid of any vision for economic reform, anything beyond one-off payments that end as soon as people have cast their ballot papers." The opposition leader's comments come after Mr. Morrison was pressed on when he would pull the election trigger during a press conference on Friday. Electoral terms go for 3 years. The last election was on the 18th of May and the next election will be held about the same time, Mr. Morrison said. "So that's 3 years and that's what the electoral term is. You'll know very soon. You'll know when I'm announcing it, and it's not that far away. But I do know this, the date of the next election and the campaign that runs up to it is extremely important. This year's federal election must be held no later than May 21st, and there needs to be at least 33 days between the instruction to the Australian Electoral Commission to hold an election and polling day. The Prime Minister must call the election by April 11th for voters to head to the polls on May 14th, or by April 18th for a May 21st election date. He is required to meet with Governor-General David Hurley at Government House in Yarralumla, Canberra, to secure the date. Mr. Albanese told reporters in Adelaide on Friday morning it was rather bizarre Mr. Morrison had continued to put off announcing the date. "I've got to say, I feel like putting in a phone call to the Prime Minister, if he doesn't know where the Governor-General lives, and offer him a lift to the lodge to call this election," Mr. Albanese said. Despite the Labor leader's sledge, the Governor-General's residence in Canberra is actually Government House, while the lodge is the Prime Minister's official home in the nation's capital.